Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
More true frightening Skinwalker stories. The first three are again by Elijah Ninja. He's done a wonderful job of relaying this wonderful lore and stories for us. The last one by Raldo GTM. And I hope to read more of his as well, as they are equally as authentic and fascinating. True Skinwalker stories by the people who know them best are the best. Part 5. In the traditional Navajo way, skinwalkers are seen as witches, but they weren't always seen that way. My late grandmother, who was a medicine woman that practiced the blessings way, told me of the origins of the skinwalker. Being a skinwalker wasn't always seen as a bad thing. In fact, they were seen as people with amazing gifts. They could change into the form of any animal, run vast distances very quickly, mimic people's voices, and some were known to use magic. During colonization, skinwalkers were used to relay messages between war camps and spy on the enemy without being detected. Having the skinwalker abilities was a gift. When we lost, the good of the community took a back seat and people began to focus on themselves. Instead of sharing what you had, people began to look after their own families, claiming property and livestock. And there were people who got the short end of the stick. Jealousy is a terrible thing. People became jealous of one another and wanted more fortunate people to lose what they had. They looked to skinwalkers who had otherworldly powers to do their bidding. Now, being a skinwalker is not a gift. You condemn yourself to a life of unhappiness and anger. In order to become a skinwalker, you must sacrifice someone that you love very much. This shows that you are indeed committed to depravity. The interesting thing is you could have met a skinwalker and not even know it. They are people like you or me that have chosen a path in which they will hurt others. Navajos want to separate themselves from death of any kind. We burn clothing and personal items of deceased relatives, and it is very taboo to keep anything that belongs to the dead. Keeping such items can make a person sick or suffer horrible events in their life. However, skinwalkers surround themselves with death. Skinwalkers have been known to grave rob and search through people's garbage. They use bones and hair from the dead and victims' personal items to create bundles. They place these bundles near a person's home, and bad luck will fall upon the person. The reason I bring this up, in my upcoming stories, I'll start addressing the bundles and retell skinwalking stories from my immediate family and myself. Again, thank you to everyone that has been reading my stories. And please, if you haven't read my previous stories, take a look. Elijah Ninja. Part 6. My older sister marches to the beat of her own drum, and this story is about her. In her younger days, my sister was very much interested in the rodeo scene. My family actually has a pretty impressive legacy when it comes to the sport. My sisters didn't compete, but had plenty of friends and family that they would go and watch. My two sisters would travel around the Southwest, following the rodeo circuit. The cowboy lifestyle isn't always glamorous. It can be filled with alcoholism, drugs, and depression. Unfortunately, this took hold of my sister, and she got in trouble with the law. My sister was looking at jail time, and the family was very concerned about what might happen to her. This was very out of the ordinary for her. My mother went to a local medicine man, and they talked about next steps. They decided to have a ceremony for my older sister. A few days passed, and it was time for the ceremony. The medicine man and his wife showed up a little past dusk. They came into our house, and we served them the food we had prepared. Everyone chatted for a bit, and when we finished eating and cleaning up, it was time to start. Everyone sat down in the living room in a large circle. The medicine man sat on the far west side of the room. My oldest sister sat to his left. In the middle of the circle was a large pile of sand that was smoothed out on the top. My uncle got hot coals from the fire and placed them on the sand. The medicine man prayed in Navajo and sang blessing songs. This went on into the night. At the height of the ceremony, the medicine man turned to my oldest sister and told her they would have to go outside and pray in the darkness. He told her not to look around as he is singing. He told her to keep her eyes on him. The medicine man, my sister, and my uncle went outside. The medicine man turned around and began singing into the darkness. My sister was watching him sing, trying to keep her focus on only him. Then she heard it. Off in the distance, she heard someone whistle. This made her feel sick to her stomach. Our elders tell us about our culture's taboos starting at a young age. One of the biggest things that they stress is to never whistle at night. They tell us only the dead whistle at night. So when my sister heard whistling out in the darkness, fear gripped her heart. She was so scared that tears began to well up in her eyes. The whistling got louder and louder, as if whatever it was moving closer and closer. My uncle was also outside during the prayer. He admits that he was scared too, but he wanted to be there for my sister. What my uncle saw was even more miraculous. He claims that as the medicine man sang, a bundle came up from above. The eagle feathers that the medicine man was holding opened up like a hand. The bundle gently floated down into the feathers, and the feathers closed around the bundle. The medicine man stopped singing and the group went back into the house. My sister stumbled in, clearly shaken from the experience. The medicine man could see how my sister was. She asked him what was whistling. He told her it was a Skinwalker and that he was trying to call the bundle back to it. We gathered around to see what was in the bundle. The medicine man opened up what looked to be a leather pouch. Inside of the pouch was a bone about 1 inch wide and 3 inches long. Upon closer inspection, the bone was hollowed out, and more items were shoved inside the bone, held in place with twigs and dirt. He dissected the bone to find hair and pieces of a shirt, both belonging to my sister, and a very tiny drawing of a woman behind bars. Whatever was calling out to this bundle had very ill intentions for my sister. Fortunately, after the ceremony, all of my sister's charges were dismissed. I asked my sister what they did with the bundle, and she said that she wasn't really sure. She said that she vividly remembers being scared when they were outside singing. My sister controls her emotions very well, so I can't even begin to fathom how scared she must have felt in that moment. Personally, I find it hard to believe that these events are merely coincidental. Part 7. My aunt told me this story. We are related by marriage, so she has a whole new set of Skinwalker stories that I would like to share with you. This story took place when she was a child. My aunt's family lived in a community about 20 miles south of Gallup, New Mexico. The area is far different from where I live. My house is surrounded by desert, and you don't really see trees until you move into the canyon. Bed Springs is a forested area, and where our story takes place. Like many people on the reservation, my aunt's family didn't have running water or electricity. In order to have water, they would have to drive into town and haul water back in large containers. The containers are huge and easily fit in the bed of the truck. Her family would place 2 containers on a long flatbed trailer to make the best of each trip. Her family went into Gallup, filled up the containers, and went around town doing other types of business. Back then, seatbelt laws weren't so strict, so my aunt and her siblings sat in the bed of the truck as they went around town. It began to get dark, and so the family started back home. Most roads weren't paved, and so they had to drive carefully because of the attached trailer. The lights of the town faded away in the distance, and soon the vehicle was shrouded in darkness. They drove, and the kids sat in the back and talked amongst themselves. That was until my aunt noticed something. A figure was crouching by the farthest water container on the flatbed. The truck wasn't barreling down the road, but it was going at a speed that would be impossible for anyone to run and jump on. My aunt nudged her siblings, and they all paused to look at the dark figure. They sat silently and squinted their eyes to look. It was too dark to really make anything out, so they ignored her and continued to talk. My aunt kept her eye on the figure and pulled hard on the sleeve of her brother when the figure began to crawl over one of the water containers. The kids all stopped and watched in horror as the figure began to move carefully over the second container. My aunt said that the figure looked like a person. However, the limbs were abnormally long. Those long limbs pulled its body closer to the kids. At this point, they began to scream and cry. They banged on the window of the truck. At this time, the creature was reaching for the tailgate of the truck. Due to the huge commotion that was now going on in the bed of the truck, the driver slammed on brakes. The creature hit the tailgate and fell down in between the truck and trailer. The driver rolled down the window and asked what was going on. The kids screamed at the driver to go. They weren't sure they were safe until they saw the trailer moving up and down as if it had ran over something large. When my aunt told me this story, I sat in disbelief. She told me that she was uncomfortable when it was crawling on the trailer, but true fear rang through her body when she saw its eyes. I asked her what she meant. She said that they were like teddy bear eyes. I didn't quite understand what that meant until I pressed further. She said that the eyes were shining. When you shine the light in the eyes of an animal, they reflect back. The braking lights were shining, and whatever they saw that night had eyes that glowed back. Memoirs from the Past by Raldo GTM. I remember growing up, I used to spend a few weekends at my grandparents' place. They lived on the Navajo reservation, not too far from the Bistee Wilderness. My grandpa used to have these 3 dogs. He called them his protectors. He used to tell me they were his alarm system, and they would alert him if anything would approach the house. He told me that something would visit them at night, and the dogs would go crazy, bark, and chase something around the house at night. My grandpa had asked me to start digging large holes in the ground so he could bury the dog houses underground. My grandpa said that this would give the dogs an advantage at night. Whatever came at night wouldn't be able to see them until it was too late. Several days went by and it was quiet. Nothing visited the house at night. One moonless night, it was dark, very dark, and I heard the first dog to the north bark. He started to make a growling sound, and it sounded like he was fighting something. I heard the other two dogs come running to help the other dog. I heard a yelp, and by then my grandpa was already up and shot his rifle in the air. Whatever came that night had left, and the dogs settled down. The next morning, we found blood and some long hair around the dog's house. And my grandpa found a finger that had a turquoise ring still on it. He believed that his dogs had ripped off the finger of a skinwalker. After my parents heard about the commotion, I couldn't stay much longer and I had to leave. About a week later, the dogs had died. 2 of the dogs had died from their skin being torn from their bodies, and the other was decapitated. My grandparents had to enlist the help of a medicine man to keep the skinwalker away. So quoth this raven. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.